In this episode, I'm going to talk about songs to identify intervals, your must-have list for musicians. Now, if you've been following me for any length of time, you know that I advocate strongly against using songs to identify intervals. So those of you that have known me for a while probably know this is a bit of a trick question, trick title. I'm not actually going to be talking too much about songs you can use. I'm going to give you some because I think if you are just starting out, and you want to use a song to help you identify an interval while you're doing interval training in the very beginning stages, you can do that. I still think it's better if you get away from using songs to identify intervals because it's just not going to help you identify them quickly. You're never going to learn the quality of the interval. You're always going to be referencing this external song to figure out what interval you're dealing with, and that's just too slow for any musician or even serious music listener. You want to be able to identify these intervals like that without any hesitation. Welcome to the UreMusic Mentor podcast. I'm Kevin Ure, and I'm here to train your ear. I'm an author of several textbooks on music composition, ear training, and music theory. I've served as a music theory professor and currently run the composer studio over at UreMusic.com. I aim to make music education accessible and provide deeper insights into the nature of music. Please like, subscribe, and find us on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform. The theme song for Jaws, that's a minor second. So you can use Jaws to identify your minor second. How about this one? Bum, 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 bum. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, happy birthday. That's a major second, so you can use a major second. What about this one? Bum, 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 bum. That's Greensleeves, a minor third. How about the major third? Oh, when the saints, oh, when the saints. That's a major third. So you could use a major third if you wanted to think of, oh, when the saints come marching in, oh, when, then you've got your major third. But you can see the problem already here is that these are all ascending. What do you do when you have to identify descending intervals? Do you then say, okay, hold on, let me see what is ascending. Oh, when, and then like, okay, oh, when, ah, ah. Okay, that's a descending major third. There's too much mental calculation here. You just got to get used to the sound of these intervals on their own merits. So there's issues because what are you going to do? Memorize songs that are ascending and descending? And then you're still not going to be fast because you're going to be sorting through all these different songs. And sometimes you'll get so confused in your head, you won't remember what a perfect fourth sounds like. Here Comes a Bride, you'll suddenly start singing a perfect fifth. So you'll make mistakes because this is an unreliable method of doing this. So that's really important. Well, let's keep going through our list. The Simpsons. The Simpsons, or Maria. Maria from West Side Story. You know, there's different tunes that you can use to try and identify these intervals, but it's just very inefficient. How about this one? Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star is a perfect fifth. You could use Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. How about this one? This interval here is a minor six, and that's from The Entertainer. And it has two minor seconds in the beginning to confuse you further. We go from D to D sharp to E, and then you get your minor six. But that is one you could use if you can remember that, and then you have to invert it as well. How about this one? I'm going to change the notes on this. My Bonnie. Really high for me. It's kind of out of my register. But My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean, right? You can use that. I prefer to use the first two notes of NBC, the theme. And for those of you that don't know, NBC used to be owned by G.E. Company. So the notes G, E, C, that's actually quite creative, but that is a major 6 as well. What about our minor 7th? There's a place for us. You could use Somewhere from West Side Story. That's what a lot of people use for the minor 7th. A little harder to sing that in reverse though. How about the major 7? Take on Me. That's an older song. So it's starting to get more complicated, especially with the minor 7, the major 7. You may not know these songs, so you have to find another one. How about this? Somewhere over the rainbow. And I'm not a vocalist, but you can use an octave from Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So these are all intervals that can be used, but I urge you not to do this. If you need to do this as a crutch in the beginning, don't do it for very long. Just get used to the sounds of the intervals on their own merits, and you'll have a much more powerful ear. Now, I show you how to do this in a very easy way in my Flawless course, but you don't have to take my Flawless course. There's lots of other courses out there, and you just have to find the one that works for you. You need to find the one that you're willing to commit to every day, that you feel is going to help you achieve your goals. And again, when you're looking for ear training, you at the bare minimum want somebody that's going to teach you intervals, chords, progressions, inversions of chords, and have some basic dictation skills. So these are all things that you want to study in a pretty laid out framework. I mean, there's sort of a sequence that makes the most sense for these, and you want to make sure that whatever program you use isn't just randomly, okay, bunch of major thirds, figure them out, or worse, here's 5 intervals, identify them, and you just keep listening to these drills over and over again until you can identify those 5 intervals. You want something that isolates intervals, isolates chords, gradually builds on previous concepts, something that takes its time. Because think about it this way. How long have you been trying to develop your ear? Maybe you just started. Well, in that case, I'm going to save you a ton of struggle. Maybe you've been doing this for years. In that case, you could have developed your ear much faster. Maybe you're kind of midway and you're seeing some good results, but you're going to start to plateau, or you're feeling like you're plateauing already. These are all pretty normal stages. There's always a point in ear training where we hit a plateau, or our ear gets so messed up that we can't hear anything anymore. A common experience is to not be able to hear the octave. After you start learning what a perfect 4th, perfect 5th, and some other intervals sound like, the octave disappears, which was an interval that was so easy for you to learn. So rather than being dismayed by the fact you can't hear the octave anymore, understand that the reason that's happening is because the octave was one of those intervals. It was the only one you could recognize in most cases. It was an easy one to sing because you're just doubling the velocity of your air. You're just kind of increasing the sound of the pitch, right? It's just an octave higher. They sound the same. So that's the first one that goes because you don't practice it. And once you start to have other intervals in your arsenal, the octave, if it's not practiced, it goes away. And so I actually believe that when the octave becomes hard for you to hear, your ear training practice is going in the right direction. That's my personal opinion. And what I do in my course is I actually bring the octave back much later, because it's one of those intervals that once you get solid octaves and once you get minor seconds down, which come later, they don't come at the beginning, then all of a sudden your ear improves pretty dramatically. So look, I don't really have a preference for any one particular ear training course. I created mine because it was based on what I did to develop my ear. And it's much more worked out now because I'm making it available to the public. But it's also based on my years of university teaching the first year of ear training and seeing how students were struggling. And so I used a lot of information from that along with stuff that I've been developing since 1998 and especially since 2007. That's when I really started to pick up my ear training journey. So find a program, get rid of these songs, don't use them as a crutch if you have to pass a test, if you're a college student. But keep developing that ear, because when you have a strong ear, it's going to be such an amazing experience. So let's talk about some of the reasons to avoid songs. One of the big ones is that songs often provide intervals in a specific musical context. So The Simpsons, Maria, Jaws, these are all occurring with a very particular rhythmic pattern and a very particular situation, and they're surrounded by other intervals, which kind of change their sound just a little bit. So when you try and isolate these two intervals, like here comes the bride, right? It's not so clear because oftentimes you'll go like this. You can't just stop there. You have to confirm it by singing the rest of the rhythm, right? If you don't sing the rest of the rhythm, you're not sure you got the perfect fourth right, especially in the beginning. So these musical contexts taint the sound of our intervals. So you want to get used to what they sound like by themselves. That's a fourth. That's a fifth. The fifth is more open sounding, but you don't even want to get into too many details with labeling them. You just want to hear, there's a fourth, there's a fifth. And without labeling them, if you listen to them enough and in the right way, you'll start to realize that the fifth and the fourth have different qualities that don't need to be defined. They do not need to be defined. We will often define them in ear training courses to help you better understand, but they do not need to be defined. There's also this concept of recognition versus anticipation. So ear training needs to focus on anticipating intervals rather than just recognizing them. So what that means is, you have a certain collection of intervals now in your mind once you've developed your ear properly. And you want to kind of hear that first note and be ready for whatever the next note is. And you want your supercharged computer here to be able to quickly narrow down the actual interval it was. You want it to be able to sort quickly. If you're busy recognizing intervals, what were the intervals there? You were too busy going through your catalog of songs. Instead, what you want to do is just have this ability to hear the intervals on their own merit. So that's really important. There's also isolation issues. So one of the ways we learned them initially is I'll play a fourth, I'll play a fifth, I'll play them in isolation. But eventually you have to hear them in context. That's why at the end of every one of my flawless courses, the dictations are so important. You have to be able to hear intervals in context, intervals in a melody, because the tonal center or atonal center, whatever kind of music we're dealing with, it tints and it shades the sound of the interval. It makes it sound like something other than what it is. So you have to be able to hear them in context. Also, if I play a major chord here, all of a sudden that perfect fourth at the beginning, it takes on a different quality. It no longer sounds so much like a perfect fourth. So we have to train your ear in a way where it doesn't matter what else is going on in the music. And that's something that I get into in the later lessons in my flawless course. You also just don't want to have an over-reliance on these songs. If you rely too much on the songs that you're using, it limits your development and it prevents you from getting a really comprehensive ear. And that's really important. Okay, so avoid the songs. It's just not going to help you. If I were to give you some of my final thoughts on ear training, I would want to wrap this up by saying, first of all, avoid songs. If you want to use them to initially hear intervals, that's fine. If you go to a piano, you play a C and you want to sing a perfect fourth, so you go, here comes, and then you check yourself, that's fine. But then repeat it like 10 times without the piano. Bum, 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 bum. In different patterns and different rhythms, so that you can start to get away from hearing intervals in isolation or using songs and hearing them in context. Ear training is such a powerful experience when you have a really solid ear. It can help you with spatial reasoning, it can help you with sports, it will open up the world around you just a little bit more. You'll be walking around and you'll hear a bird singing, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, he's saying a perfect fourth and a perfect fifth, you know? Or an example I like to give, you'll be walking on a treadmill and maybe you'll hear a major second between the belt and the motor. Or you'll notice that a doorbell is a major third. There's all these experiences that you can have, and it helps you categorize your world in even greater detail. So it makes life more fulfilling in a lot of ways. And I really want you to experience that. So what I would encourage you to do is share your experiences with me. Let me know and let other people know what has worked for you. There's so many programs out there. Obviously I'm biased, but I like my Flawless course because it includes so many different techniques and it attacks the problem of ear training from so many different angles. And you just have to spend 30 to 45 minutes a day and then you're done. And it will really develop your ear. But whatever method you choose, just make a commitment to develop your ear and practice every day. That's really the secret. Practicing every day, doing more than just hearing intervals. Transcribing music is very useful. There's a lot of things you can do to improve and develop your ear, and I really encourage you to invest some time into this because it's such a fun experience once you have it. You'll hear things in music you never knew existed. You'll be listening to an old favorite of yours, a favorite song, and all of a sudden you'll hear a new part in there that you didn't know existed. So it's really going to open your ear if you do it correctly, and you'll be able to hear things you never thought that you could actually hear, that you didn't even know were there in the music. So I'll see you again tomorrow for another podcast, and I'm looking forward to hearing what kinds of things you've done to develop your ear.